Hi, and welcome back to Down and Scaled Replicas. So, both of the Predator XPs are in primer, and they're ready for paint now, starting to look pretty good. But I'm going to set these aside for a few days because what I really want to do is I want to get back to the Convair Space Shuttlecraft and wrap it up. I'm really looking forward to working with the decals that I developed for it, and just going ahead and getting the finishing touches put on the kit. Plus, I've got a display base that I've been working on, which I'm really excited to show to you as well. So, let's go ahead and get back to the finale now of Atlas's Convair Space Shuttlecraft. This reissue of this old 1959 kit was picked up for like $13 at a discount store, and it's proven to be way more fun than I anticipated. When we last left it, everything was in white primer. Some parts did have some early color application because they were going to be tough to get at later on with the airbrush. But I'll skip ahead and I'll show you how the paint scheme is working out here. No decals yet because I do plan to make some custom decals for the kit, but first I had to get these red markings on here, this USA and this United States, because that color just doesn't tend to print well on a printer. So I knew I was going to need to cut some paint masks and actually airbrush those colors. And so what I ended up doing was I developed some artwork in Illustrator, and then what I'm showing here is I cut it on my Silhouette Cameo cutter using a masking material from Oracal called Aura Mask 810. And I've really found this to be a pretty good masking material for modeling. It's tacky enough to go down and to seal the surface and really not have much bleed under, but it does come up off the paint without lifting the paint underneath, at least if the paint has been well applied using a good lacquer-based primer first. The first step is to weed the paint mask, and that means take away all the parts that you want to allow the paint to show through. So remove the USA in this instance, and I have a pair of very fine tweezers that I use to get up underneath the paint mask there and to peel it off, and you can see it comes off pretty easily off of its backing paper. Next, we need to place some transfer paper on top of the paint mask, and this is going to help us remove it from the backing paper and then to position it onto the model. So you can see it's a little transparent. We can sort of see through it. This is going to help us with positioning it on the model. Once we've really got that rubbed down now, we're going to flip it over and we're going to remove that white backing paper off of the paint mask to reveal the adhesive that's on the paint mask itself. Now you can see it's a little tricky getting it started. It's a balance between getting the mask to adhere to that transfer tape, but not so much that you can't get it back off the model once you apply it to the model. So once you get it started, it peels off pretty easily, but it's just the initial getting it started can be a little tough. That's why you just want to get in there with these fine tweezers and make sure that everything is staying on that transfer tape. Having done that now, it's a matter of getting that properly aligned on the booster. You can see I've got some alignment marks I've made there trying to get it centered to the best of my ability. And once it's in position there, you just smooth it down on the surface. Just make sure that it's adhering to the surface there. You can see I'm just using my finger to do this. I will go back then with a little rub down stick that I have to get all the details rubbed down on there once I get the transfer tape off. But once you've got this down on the surface there, the transfer tape will come off pretty well, and the mask itself is a really low tack mask. It's kind of the same amount of tackiness as a yellow masking tape. So there shouldn't be any problem pulling this up once the paint has gone down. So now I've gone through and I've actually done the insignia red, and it is a matter of going back through and removing all of this masking now that I have on the booster. I'll get those middle parts first, like the center of the A with the tweezers, and you just want to be careful not to scratch the paint itself pulling that up. That's why really fine tweezers are the best thing to do here. And then I'll grab an edge of that masking. You can see I just kind of hold it up with my finger and then grab another set of tweezers I've got that have a really firm grip on them and just carefully pull this up as you would with any other masking tape. Like I said, very low tack here, so it should pull up fairly easily. Try to pull it along with the direction of the paint surface, and it comes up pretty well, and overall pretty happy with the paint job it leaves behind. Now, just in case you didn't get enough of that on the booster, I'm going to show the entire process here in fast motion on what I think is a second stage fuel tank. I really don't know what this thing is, but that's what I'm calling it. So the paint mask application and me kind of getting it all smoothed down on there with a wooden stick that I have, and then just mask around it. I'm going to be airbrushing this insignia red, so I need just a little bit of masking around the paint mask itself to control some spatter from the airbrush. So, okay, wrapped that up then. The paint is on there. It's time to come back through and remove all of that masking tape. I use yellow masking tape throughout this whole thing, just a low tack masking tape, and then going through with the fine tweezers and removing the paint mask itself. And there's going to be more of those little center areas like on that A on USA that need to be removed on this one here. But I'll come back again with the very fine tweezers and remove those then as well. The paint mask material itself comes off really well, good low tack stuff, no issues with pulling up this paint underneath. I've been using lacquer based paints. I've got a lacquer based primer on there. The white is all lacquer based as well too, so really no issues with peeling up any of the paint underneath. Go back through and just get those little center pieces on the D and the A there, and that should wrap this up then. Now back to having the basic paint application done here. Some black, some gray on all the parts here, the shuttle, the booster, as well as the second stage fuel tank. And I'm at the point now where I can begin to think about what the decals are going to look like. The decal artwork I worked up again in Adobe Illustrator. I really wanted to show a bunch of tiles on the bottom of this. I worked up some tile decals that I've got my fingers crossed. Those are going to go down okay on the shuttle itself. But first, taking a look at the booster. I have a few areas that I masked off there on those fins. You can see where I knew I was going to want to apply some decals. And so I've got a NASA decal on one side there and a 5 on the other. I figured that, hey, maybe these things are going to be numbered. This is going to be, you know, shuttle number 1 and 2 and etc. And this is going to be number 5 that I've got right here. So the booster is going to have a number 5 on it, and you'll see that the shuttle itself is going to have a number 5 on it as well too. My basic decal application process is to dip them in warm water, you just saw me do that, and then put down a little bit of decal set then before I apply the decals themselves. And I really like the micro scale products here. I've still got micro sol that I'm using here for the decal sol, and then I like micro set then as a good middle of the road decal setting solution. I've got some Solvasets for some really stubborn decals. It's a little bit more aggressive than the micro sol, so I can use that. I can grab that bottle if I've got something that's really being a little bit stubborn here. So you can see where I masked off those areas. I didn't want them to be black because I was going to put the decals in those areas. I've just got them. I'm applying them with a wet finger and the tweezers there. And then I've got a paintbrush that I go back after the fact and just check through on the alignment on these to make sure they're exactly where I want them to be. Once I've got them positioned where I want them, I'll go back through with a soft cloth. This is an old t-shirt here that I'm using, and I'll just blot away the worst of the water. I try not to move them as I'm doing that, but if I do, just go back and realign them again there, and just blot away the worst of the water with sort of a rolling motion with my index finger there. And so try to roll that water out from underneath the decal as best as I possibly can. And again, like I said, if I need to go back and reposition it, I can just wet it down again and reposition it if I need to. But otherwise, just trying to get the worst of the water off of there, not absolutely everything, but just the worst of it, so the decal then can sit there and complete drying. Honestly, I didn't know what to do in terms of markings on the second stage fuel tank here, so I ended up making some checkerboard decals then just for the back end of the fuel tank there, both for this rounded side here as well as the flat side, and then just some little sort of greebly nonsensical decals here and there just to add a little bit of detail to it, but just really didn't have a whole lot of ideas for how I could make this one interesting, so I thought the checkerboard might be something that would just add a little bit of interest to the back end of the fuel tank here. Now for those tile decals on the bottom of the shuttle, man, I was really sweating this one because I was just not sure how this was going to work out at all. So I just went step by step. I made sure that the surface of the bottom of the model there was it was wetted down before I ever started to apply the decal. The decal was going to be easily removed from the backing there, so I let it soak for a while. And you can see I just took it one step at a time, really just tried to make sure I had a firm hold on the decals as I went along. I wasn't going to tear the decals. You can also see that I had some gray paint applied to the leading edges of the wings ahead of time because I knew I was going to have those clear spots on the decals, and I had worked quite a bit to try to make sure I was going to have the gray paint and the decal itself aligned as best I possibly could. I'm really happy with the way that it ended up. I worked for a long time just to get all the air bubbles and the water bubbles out from underneath the bottom of the decal there. Spent a lot of time staring at it, making sure it was all aligned. I wanted to make sure that it was aligned on the center of the model, that the gray was aligned there on the leading edges. So I really had to stare at it for quite a while to make sure everything was working out okay. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the way everything worked out. It ended up looking really good on the model. I managed by just luck of the draw to get it aligned okay and to get all the water and air bubbles out from underneath it. And overall, I think they turned out really well. So given that, now I'm getting a little bit cocky. I've got some more tile decals to put on the nose up here. Things are going pretty well. I managed to get those off the backing paper and lined up just about the way that I wanted them. They needed to align somewhat with the tile decals on the bottom of the fuselage as well too. And you can see I've got a gray spot on the nose there that I painted ahead of time, so it has to line up with that as well too. But again, surprisingly, these worked out a lot better than I really thought they were going to work out. So pretty happy with how these tile decals on the top of the fuselage, on the nose here, worked out as well. At this point, it's a matter of just picking up other details there on the shuttle. So I've got some outlines for these ailerons or flaperons or whatever they are on the aft end of the shuttlecraft there. I'm putting those down. I also have some areas on the back end that are just going to be sort of some tile areas there. You can see a detail like this on the real shuttle, and I thought that would be kind of cool to have here on this concept as well too, since it sort of had the same back area on it as well. So laying those down. Then off onto putting down the identification markings. I looked at some shuttlecraft photos. They seem to flip left and right depending on which true shuttle that you're looking at here. I elected to put the NASA meatball on the left and then the flag and the name of this particular shuttlecraft on the right hand side. You can see I decided to name it Endeavour after Captain Cook's ship, and realize that there's a real shuttle named Endeavour as well too. But then I got to what I think is the second stage fuel tank, and I thought, well, what else can I do to make this fun? And I thought, well, what if the crew back at Convair that assembled the fuel tank put a little bit of graffiti on it just for fun there in a place where it would not be obvious once the shuttlecraft was joined to this second stage tank until they separated again in orbit. So I made up some little decals, a little bit of graffiti on them, and that's what I ended up doing. Again, just to add a little bit of interest to what otherwise this second stage fuel tank, I just really didn't know what else to do with it. So just something to add a little bit of interest to that when one is looking at the model. And ta-da! All the decals done on the shuttlecraft as well as the booster and that fuel tank. And like I said, I'm really happy with the way that they turned out. Turned out a whole lot better than I thought they were going to. So All right then, the next step after the decals is to go through and do a panel line wash, or sometimes referred to as a pen wash then. I've got some detail inside the cargo hold here that I modeled into it. This is a 3D printed part again, and I've got some panel lines, or I guess this would be blanket material on the real shuttlecraft. So I put a lot of that detail into the cargo bay as well too. Now a lot of this is going to be hidden at the end because I am going to have some cargo that I put into here, but I ended up putting some Tamiya panel line accent color. I think I just used their basic gray on here. So I wanted something relatively subtle, but still it was obvious that the panel lines were in there. Just went through and did a dot application on these panels. This is an enamel, so I'm going to let this dry for about 15 minutes and then come back with a Q-tip, a cotton swab, and just pick out the excess off of those panels where I don't want it. And then once that's complete, you can see how that really pops out, those panel lines there in the cargo bay. I still need to spend a little bit more time with a Q-tip. And on this back flap here, I did the same thing with a lighter gray panel line wash to pop out that tile decal or detail on it too. And I haven't talked at all really about what's going to go into the cargo bay here. I did design just some, I don't know, stuff to fill it up. This, I think, is kind of an airlock, I suppose. I saw something similar like it on one of my photos of the actual shuttlecraft. This is, well, whatever it is. It's a telescope or something with the solar panels folded up on the side there and some kind of equipment bay on the front. Again, just something to kind of catch the eye there in the cargo bay. Now once I've got those installed, then I also put the cargo bay doors on there, and I wanted those to be open to display everything that's in the cargo bay, and got some primer greenish yellow there on the edges of those doors. Pretty happy with the way that those ended up looking, again with the tiles on the bottom there. I think overall there's a lot of interesting things to look at here on the shuttle to keep one really continuing to look at it with all the detail that's on there. Also got the engine bells now installed on the second stage fuel tank on the back end there. Got a little bit darker green primer there on the bulkhead that they sit on. And then all of those decals as well as the painted United States. The booster is complete as well too. I've got the engine bells on the back end of it. You can see the top of the fuel tank there on the part that was connected to the shuttlecraft as well as that fuel tank. And on the back end there, you can see inside with the framing and some of that primer yellow-green as well as the aluminum bulkhead that it's mounted on. I'm really happy with the way the NASA meatball and the number 5 ended up on there. Now to finish up the display base then as well too, and I wanted to put some decals, some vinyl decals onto the display base. So what I've done here is I've cut some gray vinyl, again using that silhouette cutter, and then I'm applying a white vinyl decal on top of that. And this is all representing then the Convair logo, and this is going to go on top of the display base with the shuttlecraft. So this is the logo that this is supposed to represent on top of the display base. The display base itself is just a simple piece of wood that I have cut. I've put some edges on it here and painted it a gloss black. Not really super happy with the way that the paint finish ended up on the display base, but I'm moving on with it despite that. So here you can see I'm putting the vinyl application then on the top, and I've got that clear transfer tape on the top of it there, and now I'm going through and I'm just trying to smooth out all of the air bubbles from underneath that vinyl decal as best as I can, and then I'll pull off that clear transfer tape once I've got that vinyl decal attached to the surface. I also cut some vinyl words or stencils to put on the front of the display base as well too, just trying to kind of explain what's going on here. What is this model supposed to be displaying? So I'm now pulling off that clear transfer tape off that vinyl, and you can see there's a couple little areas there where maybe the vinyl, I didn't get it rubbed down entirely well enough to adhere to the surface. So I'm just working my way through here, slowly pulling this off, looking for areas where maybe I really didn't get in there and rub the vinyl down well enough to adhere to the surface. But overall, I found that these vinyl stencils that I cut, they'll work out pretty well in terms of adhering to the surface and staying on there permanently. So overall, I've been really happy with the performance of this vinyl material that I use for display bases and things such as this. And that's it. It's done. Oh my goodness, the display base was the last thing that I needed to complete. And overall, the Convair Space Shuttlecraft is now complete. Yeah, hey, that's a really good feeling when you finally finish a model, something you've been working on for weeks, maybe months, and now you've got it wrapped up, you've got it on a display base, and it's just a really good feeling of accomplishment. And particularly if you've experimented in a few areas the way that I did with these decals and you did something new, man, that's really a cool feeling. And this is the part of modeling that I really appreciate and really look forward to, is just wrapping up a project, maybe having learned a few things along the way, having experimented with a few techniques or materials that I've never used before, and then particularly on a project like this where I felt free to just do whatever I wanted to do because it's a concept. There is no such thing out there. I don't have to be perfect in terms of colors or details. It can just be stuff that I want to do and I make up for it. And I got to tell you, this reissue from Atlantis really ended up hitting all the marks for me. It was a ton of fun, and I appreciate you joining me and following along on this build as well too. Please, if you would, click subscribe here, follow me on the YouTube channel, and I will see you again shortly. Happy modeling.